Hi guys, Pavi is back with another video. Apologies, it's been a few weeks since I've been on here. I've been consumed with a lot of content stuff that I'm doing for paddle, gearing up for an exciting year next year, but also for tennis as well. I'm gearing up quite a lot of stuff. I'm still going ahead with my podcast where I'll be interviewing a lot of people from the tennis and paddle world, and that is all being set up to start from January 2026. So apologies for the delay. I'm back. I just really wanted to kind of speak about the end of season really for tennis. Obviously, there's a lot happened in the last month or so that we need to catch up on. And no better place to start than Novak Djokovic, of course. Novak Djokovic ended his season with a phenomenal win in Athens. Athens holding an ATP event for the first time in 20 or 30 years, possibly even more. And Djokovic, of course, has recently made the move to Greece, to Athens. So he was very, very keen to support the event, take part in the event. And what an event it kind of turned out to be. It was heartwarming for us seeing so many of the Noel fam that made it across to Greece. I've spoken to so many fans and they've all said they had a fantastic time. They said it was really well organised. Obviously, the extra bonus on top was Djokovic winning. But there was lots of events going on as well. And you know, a huge credit to Charlie Gomez as well. I think he does a lot for the Noel fam. He perhaps doesn't get the credit he deserves. But, you know, he and along with the rest of the team organised some meetups with Novak. You know, this is going to be a case where not every single fan is going to be able to be lucky enough to get that opportunity, but the fact that he gives his fans any opportunity is unbelievable. You know, Novak Djokovic is one of the greatest athletes in the entire world, and the amount of access and time he gives to his fans is unparalleled. You won't get to see this with any of the superstar of that stature. The amount that Djokovic does, so we really appreciate that. It was a fantastic event, and what a final! You know, it couldn't have been a better final. The two top seeded players, Novak Djokovic, Lorenzo Musetti, went head to head, full house in Greece, and it turned into a 3-hour thriller. Absolute thriller. You know, Lorenzo Musetti, which Djokovic alluded to in the interview, was the best that he has ever seen him play on a hard court, and I can say that as well. Musetti, obviously, his major strength, if you look at his results, has been on clay, but this time he really made the adjustment well to hard court. He took the first set of Novak Djokovic, and I'm not going to lie, I thought Musetti's just not missing here. He's just not missing a ball, and I thought Djokovic is really going to have to dig deep, and he did just that. You know, he wins the second set. The first two sets, you know, the standard was incredible. You know, the incredible level by Djokovic, his serving, his movement. It was as good as I've seen him play this year. He takes the second set. The third set, Djokovic looked like he had control. He went 5-3 up, but Musetti then, he never gave up, and which is unusual really with Musetti. He has got some history of kind of when he's ahead and then starts to lose, he kind of loses a little bit of focus and confidence, maybe it's psychological, but this time he kept on going. He broke Djokovic back for 5-all. Djokovic was a little bit deflated, but then he again goes and breaks Musetti the next game, spurred on by thousands of fans cheering him on, and he completes the win 7-5. He takes his second title of the year. It's 101st title in all, and another top 10 win. And it was so important for Djokovic. We saw how happy he was. You know, he took his shirt off. He was very emotional. All of his family were there. It is very rare these days for Djokovic. All of his family is there. His brothers, his mum, his dad, his uncles, his aunts, Yelena, the kids. You know, it was a very much a family occasion, so it was very emotional for Djokovic. Obviously, he's also moved recently to Athens, and to deliver in front of the place that he's now going to be living in is going to be very, very special to him. And we saw that emotion. We saw how much it felt to him. It meant so much to Djokovic, not only that he did it in Athens, but I think for himself, he knew that he still got that level. And that is so important for Djokovic. He knows that he has still got the ability to play at the very, very highest level. And soon after that, he did an interview saying that, you know, he would ultimately want to keep playing till 40. So hopefully that will stop all the questions that he's asking from people. When are you retiring? When are you retiring? He's told them now that he wants to play till 40. He wants to retire at the Olympics. 40, 41, I think he might even be then. So, he sees himself that he still wants to play for a few more years. But from a fan point of view, it was fantastic watching Djokovic win the title. It meant that he consolidated his place in the top four. So he finished the season in the top four, playing a very limited schedule. Absolutely unbelievable, really, if you think of kind of all the kind of press that he's had, that he's finished. He's no longer able to beat the younger players, compete. He's finished the fourth best player in the whole of the ATP tour, and he's not played a fraction of the matches that some of the other players have done. So it was huge, absolutely huge. And delighted for Djokovic. And soon after that, he announced that he wasn't going to go to Torino to the ATP Tour Finals, and I completely applauded that. I mean, what a way to finish the season. You've just beaten a top 10 player in a 3-hour classic in Athens in front of all of your family. You don't need to now go to Torino. You finished that season strong. He's had loads of PR commitments that he's had to do since then, and he could just watch Torino and not be part of this fanfare that was gonna, the Sinner fanfare, the Sinner circus. Djokovic has not played in Italy since that bottle thrown incident in Rome. Was it May 2024, I believe it was, in the Rome Masters, where he was accidentally hit by a water bottle. Obviously, my feelings at the time was there was a lot of red flags around that whole incident. There was misreporting. We were initially told by an official Associated Press statement that was thrown by a kid from a kid's rucksack. It was only when footage from an actual fan, from an old fan, showed that actually it was a grown man. It wasn't a small rucksack by any means. And security was called and he fled, and Italian association decided that they didn't want to do any further investigations in that. Djokovic has not played competitively in Italy since then. So I don't know if that bore any relation to his decision, but I think his official decision that he gave was that he was nursing an injury, and obviously he needed time to recover from that. But whatever it was, I was just glad that he wasn't part of this circus that is kind of with Sinner all the time, where he's lauded as some sort of hero. People are forgetting that he's served a 3-month doping ban. So he admitted to some, anti-doping offences. You wouldn't take a 3-month ban if you didn't admit that you were in the wrong. But yet he's still treated like a hero. The ATP final went ahead. He unsurprisingly won. He won at a canter. I think Alcaraz was a bit fatigued going in there. He didn't lose a single set. It wasn't a particularly good tour finals, to be honest. I think there seems to be a lot of resignation from some of the players that Sinner is just going to turn up and win, and he did that in front of his own people. The one good thing for me is that Alcaraz finished the world number one, which was important. Sinner finished the year-end number one after serving an anti-doping ban. That would have been a really, really bad look for tennis. I mean, the fact that he was allowed to play in the tour finals, the fact that he's been allowed to play throughout the time, pretty much from when he failed his drug test, apart from a convenient 3-month ban in between slams and returning just before the Rhone Open, is bad enough. But it is what it is, and we will keep pushing on that. So Sinner went on, he won, he beat Alcaraz in the final to lift another title, and that was the end of the ATP season for a couple of months. Soon after that, obviously, I want to talk about a couple of things now. I want to talk about, first of all, I want to talk about the ATP Awards. Now, there was a shortlist in this category which really got on my back, was the ATP Breakthrough Player of the Year. Now, this is typically awarded to a young player that's burst onto the scene, that has, risen many ranking points, has won his first title, in the ATP, and of making a big mark on that on that category. And the 4 people that were nominated for that were Valentin Vachereau. Okay, he's 26, but yes, he won his first Masters in Singapore, so that was a big thing. So you think, okay, well, you know, there's merit in that. There was João Fonseca. Fonseca is a young, talented player. He won his first, you know, big ATP title this year. He's made moves to, you know, get into the top 30 now, 30, 35. So, you know, his was merited. Jakub Mensik, he was the number one teenager for many, many, much part of the season. He's 20 now, so he's no longer a teenager, but he's continuing to go on. Was it much of a breakthrough for Mensik this year? Probably not. I would probably say it was more than last year. Now, the fourth category, which I couldn't believe, was Jack Draper. Jack Draper, who's 24 years old, has broken onto the ATP 2, 3, 4 years ago, hasn't played for 3 months, and was kind of really struggling in the summer with his dip in results. Yes, I think he won his first Masters, but, you know, he's been knocking on that door. You know, he finishes the year 10. I think the year before he finished 15, so he raised 5 places. And they excluded Lerner Tien. Lerner Tien, the guy who's won a 500. He was in the final against Yannick Sinner in Beijing. He's risen over 100 ranking spaces. He's up to top 30. He has had 6 or 7 top 10 wins. Burst onto the scene. He's still a teenager. He wasn't even nominated for the 4. Now, this is, you know, for me, who thinks a lot of these awards for the ATP are rigged, because they want to push a narrative, they want to push a propaganda. I just couldn't understand it. Jack Draper, the son of a long-standing CEO member of the LTA, was in there when he's barely played. He was the oldest of the 3, and they excluded Lerner Tien. Now, was that because they want Fonseca to win, and they thought that if they put Lerner Tien there, that the players might vote for him instead of Fonseca? I don't know the reasons, but I just know it's BS. And you know, that's why in the last few weeks I've been looking at all the kind of awards that the ATP do, and a lot of it seems to be pushing their narrative. You know, if you remember back in 2023 with the ATP awards, Sinner and Simone Vignosi, I can't pronounce his surname, the 2 coaches won Coach of the Year for Yannick Sinner in 2023. Look at Yannick Sinner's results in the Grand Slams in 2023. They were actually worse than they were in any other year that he'd been a pro in the last, you know, when he was playing 2021, 2022, he performed better. But yet they were given Coach of the Year. It was almost like they were setting him up for awards. They gave him the most popular fans player of the year. Now, talking about that one, in over 2 decades, the only other person that has won that award from the whole of the ATP is Roger Federer. Just one player from all of the ATP. Now you think, yeah, okay, well, he's popular. Look at that one. Now let's look at the Sportsmanship Award. From 2003 to 2021, 18 years, that award was given to only 2 players. 2 players, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, for sportsmanship. So this wasn't the best player award, the most popular award. This was sportsmanship. So it's almost like these awards are being used to push a narrative. And I'll call it straight. You know, I'm not someone who's going to say things to get job opportunities. You know, we've seen Chris Eubank, who's retired at 29. Yeah, wish him all the best for the future. But he's someone who's pushing the narratives, and he's going to get media opportunities. He's already turning up on Served Up with Andy Roddick. He will get more money and more job opportunities than he did languishing in his tennis career towards the latter end when he'd gone past outside the 200, because he pushes narratives. I will not do that. You know, I can say that and say, yes, you know, Federer and Nadal deserved it. Sinner is the most popular fan. You just have to look at social media records and look at the numbers that Sinner's got compared to the likes of Djokovic, Alcaraz. He's nowhere near. Even Nick Kyrgios has a bigger following than Yannick Sinner. But yeah, he's been awarded this award, but we never get to see the results. We never get a breakdown of who's voted, how's it voted for. It's all done behind the shadow of whatever goes on at the ATP. So that is my rant on the ATP awards. They don't mean anything for me, because I just think a lot of the awards are actually shortlisted by the media, by the establishment media. and they shortlist 3 or 4. So the players, I think, well, there's 500 players. You've given me a shortlist of 3 or 4. I've spoken to players, and a lot of them say they don't even bother voting. They're just like, well, that's not who we would choose. We've given a shortlist of 3 or 4, and you look at who chooses it. It's the International Tennis Writers Association. And who's in there? You got Ben Rothenberg, Tuka Carahel, Simon Briggs, all the usual suspects that we know that are there to desperately protect the establishment and push their narratives. And that isn't proper journalism. It isn't proper journalism, whether you like it or not. And I had a go at Jill Gross the other day, who I used to respect, but he's now going down the line. Now, he was talking about Djokovic's discussion on Piers Morgan. So Djokovic did an interview with Piers Morgan a couple of weeks ago, and it was discussed what he felt really happened with the Sinner case. Djokovic said enough. He said there was a lot of red flags in that case, and he said that a couple of times. There was a lot of things that happened that shouldn't have happened. The fact that it was kept quiet for 5 months, which even Roger Federer is like, well, if there was some uncertainty, why was he allowed to play during those investigations? A lot of people go, oh, he was cleared by the court trials. He wasn't. He was cleared by hearings by the ITIA. There was so many conflicts of interest. Yannick Sinner hired a lawyer that previously was defending the ITIA against Tara Moore to push for a ban. He's now got her to push for him to go against the ban. If that's not a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. There were so many red flags. Umberto Ferreira, the guy who the story came up with, within 5 minutes they said they knew how Yannick Sinner was contaminated. If you are innocent and you've just been told that you failed a drug test, you'll think, is it something that I've ate? Is it something that I've ingested? Is it a medicine? Is it a nutrition? But no, it must have been from the massage that my physio gave me. How many people even think that? Yeah, I must have caught drugs from a massage. From a massage! But you've got all these shills and establishment. Yeah, well, it seems legit. And I'm glad Djokovic put it straight out there and said there was a lot of red flags. This isn't just me who's beating on about this. So many players are talking about this, but it gets hidden. And the reason why I'm so disliked in tennis Twitter is because I'll call it as it is. And I don't care, if I get vilifying, I get a heap of threats, abuse. I don't care. For me, morals, tennis means so much to me. It's very, very important to me and has given me so much more. And what's most important to me is that it continues to be a sport of integrity, principles, and fairness to all, and equality to all. And that, I don't believe, has been happening, not this year, not certainly in how Yannick Sinner was treated, but also in the last 2 decades. And there's plenty of evidence to suggest that. But I'm glad the people are still talking about the Yannick Sinner case, because there was red flags. He was allowed to play for 5 months. If I was playing a sport and they've said, Pavi, you have just failed a drugs test, and I knew I was innocent, what I would do, I would get on a video, do a press conference and say, I'm going to be upfront with everyone. I don't care what other, if I'm supposed to say this or not. I've just been found guilty of failing 2 drug tests, but I'm telling you I'm innocent, and I'm going to prove my innocence to you. There was nothing from Yannick Sinner. To this day, he's not done a single press conference or a video to explain what happened. He kept quiet for 5 months. Now, does an innocent person be quiet? The ITIA didn't tell anyone. During this time, he becomes the world #1. The ATP have done a huge big montage and a eulogy for Yannick Sinner, like he's the next coming to God, when he became #1. That wouldn't have happened. He went on to win Grand Slams while this was being investigated. I still, to this day, believe that I felt that this wasn't going to come out at all. I think it was a whistleblower that actually ended getting that news out in the public just after he'd won the Cincy Masters in August, and then it was made public just before the US Open, and he was still allowed to play. And then what people forget is that WADA review every single one of the ITIA's decision that they make in anti-doping. Not a single case, not one case have they appealed before until it was the Yannick Sinner case, because there was glaring differences in that case. You just have to look at Stefano Battaglino, an Italian player, lower ranked player, who gave the exact same excuse as Yannick Sinner. He said that he was contaminated through a massage from a physio, and it was the same product, clostebol, that was found in his system. Also a tiny amount, but the ITIA didn't believe him. They didn't believe him. Stefano Battaglino's physio was the ATP one, so he is not on his payroll. Whereas Giacomo Naldi was on his payroll. But did they ask for bank statements for Giacomo Naldi? No. For Sinner? No. For Ferrara? No. Did they ask for a hair sample for Yannick Sinner? No. But then they did for Igor Swiatek, and they have done for a lot of other people, because they say that getting a hair sample can give you evidence if it's a habitual use, if that person is using doping regularly. All of that was admitted. They believe this story, this crazy story. He's got one of the most elite teams in the world, but they believed that that the physio would apply a massage to Yannick Sinner, who allegedly has psoriasis, without taking any protection, without putting any protective gloves, and he had an open wound. So he was using this trifluridramol on, which had clostebol in, which he knew, because he's also been part of a basketball team which had an issue with that. Umberto Ferreira is a qualified pharmacist. He had it in his possession, but he gave it to Giacomo Naldi. These are one of the highest, the top fitness coaches, the top physios in the world, and they made this many errors, and the ITIA said, yeah, fine, we'll believe it. WADA didn't believe it, and they took it to the Court Arbitration of Sport. That's the highest sports court in the entire world. That is the only true independent court really for tennis doping, because the ITIA is solely funded by tennis, and it has many shared sponsors. One of the most key sponsors for ATP tennis is Rolex, who is also a key sponsor of Yannick Sinner. So you can see some of the conflicts of interest. We were waiting for the Court Arbitration of Sport. They looked at the information that WADA provided them and thought there is a case here. They set a hearing for April the 16th and 17th of this year, which Yannick Sinner failed to attend, and instead negotiated a 3-month ban just after winning the Australian Open. It was 3 months, so he could return just before Roland Garros, so he didn't miss a single slam. And none of the paid establishment media thought that was an issue with that. If you think that's not bad enough, in July, after he'd won Wimbledon, so you'd think he's happy with how his team's going, happy with everything, he unexpectedly sacks the physio and fitness trainer that he had brought in to replace the physio and fitness trainer that he had sacked after alleging that they were negligent. He then brings them back. He brings Umberto Ferreira back. This is the guy who was carrying a banned substance. He knew it was banned, and he gave it to Sinner's physio. Not only was his fitness trainer, Umberto Ferreira was Sinner's head of anti-doping controls. Apparently he would scrutinise absolutely everything that Yannick Sinner ingested. But yet he carried with him a banned substance, performance-enhancing substance that he knew was banned, because he's a qualified pharmacist and he confirmed that he knew it was banned. But yet he still gave it to Giacomo Naldi, and the ITIA thought that was fine. And at the time, without WADA, they only gave him a few days suspension, and they believed his story. So that is why Djokovic, I'm sure, was saying there was a lot of red flags in that case, and there was, and there is, and there continues to be so. And I will continue to speak up about that case, because I am very, very passionate that tennis does not become a corrupt cabal type organisation, and I will continue speaking up. And if that means that I will lose media opportunities, then so be it. You know, before I spoke about the Sinner one, and before I kind of came clear as a big supporter of Djokovic, I was a regular on BBC Radio to input on tennis analysis, on also various other sporting bodies. I've had accreditations for tennis events before, but because I go against the establishment, then they will dry up, and it doesn't bother me, because journalism is a passion for me. You know, even though I ended up going down the finance route after university, I studied journalism at college, and that was something that I was always going to go into. But for me, being truthful is what journalism is about, and the modern journalism now is simply pushing narratives. It's about manipulation, it's about misinformation. It's not necessarily about lying, because if you lie, journalists can get sued for defamation, or the companies that they're working for, but it's the way they present information, the way they manipulate information. And I could not do that. You know, I could you know, if someone said to me, look, if you can tone down and just, you know, push narratives and not really focus on things that, you know, we don't really want to upset the people that bring so much into tennis, I would simply say no. So I would rather go on my own and speak up, and I will continue to do so. So yeah, so that is my end of summary year for the tennis. I think, you know, if we go back to Novak Djokovic, I think he's done I think he's done really, really well. He's 38 years old. He got to the semi-finals of all four majors. He made semi-finals of all the Grand Slams. I'm convinced if he didn't get injured at the Australian Open, he would have gone on to win that. He was very, very unlucky there. He played some of his best tennis that I've ever seen when he beat Carlos Alcaraz in the quarterfinals, and then unfortunately had a muscle tear, and that paid to that hope. I think he had a great run in the French Open. Wimbledon as well was really unlucky. He had a heavy fall almost on the last match against Flavio Caboli, and the fall was literally a few rows away from me. I was at that match, and I knew straight away that Djokovic had difficulty the way that he looked towards his box and his body language. So again, he was very, very unlucky with Wimbledon. In the US Open, I thought Alcaraz was just phenomenal, and you know, Djokovic just ran out of steam a little bit, but he did really, really well. He won 2 titles, 4 semis, consolidated his place in the top 4, and he's now confirmed that he is already in training for Australia, where he will be seeded number 4. And I think he is going to have a really, really good chance to go all the way. If he doesn't, I'm not too fussed. As I've said countless times, Djokovic for me has won everything in the book. Anything else that he wins, whether it be a major or a minor title, is a bonus to me. But I'm just enjoying the fact that he's still out there inspiring people, not just on court but off court. I thought he conducted himself so well in the Piers Morgan interview. So many people can learn from Djokovic, and I think it was important to clear as well. You know, obviously Piers Morgan was one of the parts of the establishment. He kind of he moves wherever he thinks will get him job opportunities and views, and he was obviously one of the main perpetrators that was against Djokovic in Australia 2022. So something that we will never forgive and never forget. Djokovic is a much better person than me, but he knew he could go and speak with Piers Morgan freely, and then the audience will see what a nice guy, what a great guy, inspirational guy Djokovic is. And you know, he was straight. He said, I've never been anti-vaccination, never. You know, he's taken vaccinations as a kid, but with this one, it was a new product. He's now been proven right, really. There was a lot of uncertainty about that, and he had a right not to take that not to take that injection, like many people have had a right to it. And you know, he's never regretted it. He said he's never regretted that decision, and I'm so grateful and thankful that he didn't take that either. But the fact that he was so badly punished, he was punished worse than Yannick Sinner has for failing 2 drug tests for banned performance enhancing substance. And Djokovic was punished more for simply not taking a drug. But that is the world that we're in at the moment. You know, we'll talk about the Davis Cup as well. Obviously, Yannick Sinner got a bit of flack from quite a few Italians for not playing in the Davis Cup. You know, they've just seen him get a heap of money from Saudi Arabia in exhibition. They saw him coast to the ATP title, World Tour finals, and then the big thing for them was the Davis Cup in Italy in the finals, and Sinner said he wanted to rest. That didn't go well with quite a lot of the media. They turned on Yannick Sinner, and I think quite rightly, really. You know, if you just think of the amount of stuff that Italy have done for him since he failed that drug test. You know, he got to meet the Pope. He's had huge amounts of support and love You know, they've got all the fans cheering for him, and you would think that he would want to give a little bit back. But no, he didn't want to. He wants to rest, and I'm glad Italy went on to win that title, because it just showed him that you know, they don't really need Sinner, and you know, the crowd support, they were all behind Italy. You know, Caboli and Berrettini, I think, won all their matches, so they were the stars of that, and yeah, credit to them. You know, full credit to them. As I said, you know, some people say I've got something against Italy, which absolutely isn't the case. You know, as I said, I've holidayed in Italy many times. You know, I love Flavio Caboli. He's one of my favourite players outside of Djokovic. You know, on the women's side, I'm a big fan of Jasmine Paolini as well. So, you know, it's not a case that I'm not a fan of Italy. I'm just not a fan of corruption. And it doesn't matter if you're Italian, Serbian, Indian, British. I just don't like it. You know, and you know, the fact that Yannick Sinner is Italian has got absolutely nothing to do with it. I think he was treated a lot more. He wasn't treated as other players have been treated when they failed drug tests, and that's a simple fact. So there we go. I will be back doing more regular podcasts here, and you know, keeping you guys up to date with everything. And I'll do one before the end of the year as well, as a summary of the year. But for now, peace out. God bless you from wherever you are. Thanks for keep supporting me. Make sure you follow my YouTube, Pabby G. Hit like, subscribe. Anything that can give me support to kind of battle against these bigger players will be much appreciated. So thanks all. Peace out. Take care, and I'll be back with another video soon. Bye.